Hey guys, I'm coL.QXC. Today I'm going to be talking about the Select All Army hotkey. For those of you who don't know, there's a hotkey in StarCraft that you can bind to any key you want, and it selects all of your military units on the map, and it puts them in a group. And you can do whatever you want with that, like attack people, or defend things, or whatever. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what this hotkey does, when you should use it, when you shouldn't use it. There's kind of a negative stigma. This is like a guilty secret among people that I talk to. I do a lot of coaching, and a lot of people have said like they use the Select All Army hotkey, but they know they shouldn't. They do it anyway because it's just so tempting. It's like the succubus of StarCraft. Because it's really the easiest way to get every single unit you have that can fight and put it in one place. There's no other way to do that with such a small... It's literally, you're looking somewhere on the map, you hit Select All Army hotkey, you hit A, and then you click. So 3 actions, and you have taken every unit you have everywhere on the map and brought them to a single point. So the Select All Army hotkey is really good at grabbing all of your units. It requires almost no attention, no APM, and it's guaranteed to grab everything you've got. Whereas, let's say you're using your army hotkey or whatever, may not necessarily do that, depending on how your hotkeys are set up. So what are the big problems with using this hotkey? Well, the number one is, let's say you've got a map and you've got a bunch of Marines spread out. Your opponent is doing a huge attack, big Protoss ball coming, lots of Colossus, Stalkers, whatever. You feel very threatened. You want to get everything you've got and bring it to the center. Well, you're going to lose all map awareness because every Marine that you had spotting for things is coming home, and you're going to lose some supply for really no reason at all because the 3 or 4 or 5 or even 8 Marines that are trickling behind that army are going to walk into it and just die. They're not going to contribute to the fight in any way. And it's also a way to recall drops on accident. So let's say you want to defend this attack, but you've got 2 medevacs waiting to drop your opponent. Use the Select All Army hotkey, the 2 medevacs fly through their base, trying to get home, and they die. And so you're down, some massive amount of supply, plus you don't have that additional aggressive opportunity anymore. And that's kind of a problem. Let's see. Is there any other problem with using that hotkey? Oh, yes. There's one other thing. If you play Protoss, it's going to pull all your observers to the fight, which is really stupid. Because you obviously don't want all your observers to go to the fight, unless you're fighting an army of Cloaked Banshees, or Ghosts, or Swarm Hosts, or Burrowed Roaches. Whatever. Your army probably has an observer with it anyway. And if you play Zerg, it's going to pull all your Overseers to the fight, which is not as much of a problem as with Protoss. With Protoss, especially against Terran, you've got your observers kind of spread out to spot for drops, one maybe in their base. So if you get in a problem or in a situation where you have to pull everything home, there's kind of this fallout. After you use the Select All Army hotkey, you've done it, you've brought everything together in the most efficient way possible. But the fallout is, if you survive the attack, you have to spend way more actions re-establishing map awareness. If you're Protoss, you've got to send several observers back out onto the map. Terran players got to resend Marines out. Zerg players got to resend Lings, re-spotting the map, re-getting that map awareness. So there's that kind of fallout to take into account when you use this hotkey. So when should you use the hotkey? We know what it does, we know what it's good for, we know what it's bad for. The number one time you should use the Select All Army hotkey is when the fight that is about to happen will literally make the game end one way or another. If you're Protoss and your observer sees that they're pulling all their SCVs, you don't care about map awareness. Like, you don't need map awareness. He's coming at you with literally everything he's got. Like, he's even pulling his workers. He's using the Select All Army hotkey. He's bringing literally every single unit. So it's okay if you lose all map awareness, because it doesn't matter any unit you have on the map is going to be completely useless if you lose the main fight. Same thing with, you know, some 2 base timings from Protoss, some 3 base timings, things like that. Or if, let's say you just lost a fight and your opponent's counterattacking, that's another great time to use the Selectable Army hotkey, because you know they're going to go for the kill. And you just lost a lot of supply, so it's very hard, it's likely that it's going to be a really hard fight for you to actually hold on to. This isn't really another use of the Selectable Army hotkey. It has nothing to do with what we've talked about so far, but I think it's really nice. When the only units you have in the game at the moment are units that you want to be actively controlling, it's basically a way to hotkey units without looking at them. And so let me give you an example. You're playing Terran versus Zerg, your first Reaper comes out, and it's literally the only military unit you have at the time. You use the Selectable Army hotkey, and then you bind that group to whatever you want to micro your Reaper on. And then the second Reaper comes out, and you select all Army hotkey, and you bind that to the group. And now you never have to look back at your base, and you can keep hotkeying additional Reapers. And this kind of works once you add Hellions, depending on which build you are doing. You may or may not have Marines. You can also just select all Army hotkey, deselect 2 Marines, and then, or 4 Marines or whatever, and then hotkey all of that together. And it's a really convenient way to manage your early game army. Especially as a Terran player, we do a lot of early game harass, and we have very few units for a pretty long time. Going off of that, there's another really good use for it, and this doesn't have anything to do with what we were talking about before, again, is in the mid or the late game, let's say you're a Terran player, you're playing Protoss, and you see some Colossus, and you're like, oh, like, how many Vikings do I actually have? Select all Army hotkey, tab until you get to the Viking group, and then you can just count. That's a really easy way to keep tabs on how much of your army is where in terms of the unit composition. Obviously, it doesn't tell you where it is on the map. And probably the final and perhaps the most useful use of this, no? I mean, they're all pretty useful. This hotkey is really strong. It's really easy to misuse. You just use it for every fight. You would never have any units except in one place. You die to drops. You're aim moving back and forth. You can't see anything. Like, that's not the way you want to use this. But if you ever feel like you look in the top right-hand corner and your supply is really high, you're at 200, but your army looks like garbage. It looks tiny. That is a great time to use the Select All Army hotkey, because it's very likely that either you have way too many workers, which is possible, or some of your production buildings are misrallied, or you forgot about some of your units. Definitely have seen games where, you know, medevac comes in at 12 minutes, flies out, and the Terran player literally just completely forgets about it, and it's just 10 supply, like, in the abyss that will do nothing for the entire rest of the game. It doesn't happen much, but it's a way to kind of check on yourself. You're like, wow, this army seems really small. Like, let's just select all Army hotkey and bring everything here, because I feel like something is missing, and it's much easier to just use the Select All Army hotkey and pull it all to you rather than to go searching for it. Cool. So those are main times when you want to use it. A couple times when you don't want to use it. First one is kind of in the mid-game, when you're not actually going for an attack and you're just looking to scout your opponent out. Especially when you're only working with like a small number of units. So let's say you're Protoss and you open Blink Stalkers. You don't want to use the Select All Army hotkey to move your Blink Stalkers around the map, because then you'll be pulling your Observers, you'll be pulling your Mothership Core, your Zealots, your Sentries. Like, you don't want any of that with those Stalkers. All you want is your Stalkers. With Terran, you know, you want to keep some units at home to deal with that Warp Prism, or you only want enough units to load up in the 2 medevacs that are with them. So you don't use the Select All Army hotkey. Also, if there are potential fights that aren't super important, it's like 20 supply from you, 20 supply from your opponent. You're both at like 170 supply. Then if you use the Select All Army hotkey, usually your opponent can just get away. And you're also, again, giving up. There's so many negatives to using the Select All Army hotkey that you have to be sure that you really are willing to accept those negatives if you do end up using it. And another time is, so if you need every single unit you have at the fight, but you've got time, you know, it's not like this army appeared at your front door. It's like you scan and you see 8 or 9 gateways in your opponent's base and it's 11 minutes in. You're like, okay, yeah, he's attacking me. I don't know exactly when, but I know it's coming. Then you can just grab everything by hand, and that allows you to keep some units at the watchtower, keep your spotter out on the map. Or one thing you can do is select all army, A-move to the point that you're planning to defend or attack or whatever, and then go on the map and box and stop your spotters, your watchtower holders. And that's another way to kind of negate some of those disadvantages. But of course that takes time and it takes attention. So it's not really something you can do when you're, you know, army appears, I need everything here right now, right this second, and I have to build bunkers and do all these other things. And the final one is you want to be mindful of what units you're actually going to bring when you use the Select All Army hotkey. For example, Terran versus Zerg. I'm using Hellions and I'm kiting some speedlings. I do not want to use the Select All Army hotkey and pull the 6 Marines out of my base to try and fight these lings with my Hellions, because the Marines aren't actually going to contribute to the fight at all. They're just going to die because I'm not going to be able to sit and fight and defend them, and the Marines can't run away like the Hellions are able to. So to summarize, very briefly, Select All Army hotkey, very good but very dangerous. Use it when you need everything together and the fight that's about to happen seems super duper important to the outcome of the game. Don't use it for basically anything else except for some of those little tricks as a way to hotkey units as they come out, or to just manage your unit composition and grab certain types of units as appropriate. I'm coL.QXC. This has been the Select All Army hotkey. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.